Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. You absolutely deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Don't let anyone ever make you think otherwise. In today's episode, I want to share with you how you can recognize emotional abuse when you can't recognize emotional abuse. In other words, emotional abuse is one of those insidious, compounding, day after day behaviors that you may not see in the moment. It takes a bigger context, a zoomed out perspective of the relationship that you're in, whether it's romantic, family, friends, coworkers, or whatever, that you can look at it from afar and see all the days combined and all the behaviors combined that give you the big picture of what's really going on. The reason I say that is because when someone is being emotionally abusive in a subtle way, and somebody else witnesses that, they're not going to see it as emotional abuse. Whereas if you're being exposed to it day after day after day, you're going to feel it, but you still may not be able to identify it. And the feeling part is what I really want to focus on today. Because if you can't identify the behaviors of emotional abuse, then at least start getting used to how you feel when you're in communication with someone, that the conversation makes you feel negative in some way. Because when you get in touch with the feeling that's happening inside of you, then you don't necessarily have to pinpoint the behaviors. Now, I'm going to take the very first few checkboxes out of the MEAN workbook over at loveandabuse.com. That is the workbook that helps you to assess your relationship to figure out if you're being emotionally abused. It's also a healing guide. But the workbook itself has a 200-point checklist. And the very first question, and it has 7 checkboxes underneath, is all about how you feel. And it's especially about how you feel after a conversation with the person you're with. And so the question is, well, it's not really a question, it's a statement, but it says, during and after many conversations with my partner, I can feel what? And there's 7 checkboxes. Embarrassed, ashamed, guilty, anxious, angry, uneasy, and blamed/responsible. Let's go over these. The first one, embarrassed. The emotional abuser will make fun of you in front of their friends. They'll make fun of you in front of your friends. They'll make fun of you in front of anyone that belittles you, that makes you feel insecure inside. The more insecure you feel, the more you're going to need to rely on them to feel secure. Now that's odd. It's an odd way to look at it, but what they're trying to do is put you in that insecure place because they know that you'll be coming back to them for that secure feeling. And that gives them a level of control that they want. So when you're being emotionally abused, it's all about how can I control you to get what I want, and you are subservient or submissive to me so that I always keep you uneasy. And we haven't even gotten to that checkbox yet, but that is one of them. But if I can embarrass you in front of other people, you're going to get mad at me at first. Me being the emotional abuser in this example, you're going to get mad at me at first and you're going to be upset. But guess what? You're going to want the relationship to last. You're going to want the relationship to heal. You're going to want to see the good side of me. And what you're going to do is come to me and talk to me and try to figure out, and maybe even tell me that you're angry, that I said certain things about you, but you're waiting for that compassionate response. And until I can create that compassionate response, you're going to look for it. And so the emotional abuser has you in a spot that makes you want them to do something, and you keep seeking it. You keep searching for it because they know you're not going to leave. And if you don't leave, then they can continue doing these things to you without accountability, because the emotional abuser, they're not accountable until you leave. That is their gauge. That is their guide. If they're being emotionally abusive and you don't leave, then they win. That's how this normally works, unfortunately. But fortunately, As you learn this stuff, as you continue to listen to this show, as you go through the Mean Workbook, if you have it, again, it's not required to listen to this show, but if you have it, you'll understand the exact behaviors that outline emotional abuse so that you can tell when it's happening. This particular episode is when you can't tell it's happening, when you don't know the behaviors. So one of them is you feel embarrassed after a conversation. If you feel embarrassed, then they have some level of control because you're going to want to make up. That's what they're counting on. The next one is ashamed. Now, if you have values, they will be used against you. If you have kindness, that will be used against you. If you have ethics, morality, it will all be used against you. Can I say that with 100% certainty? Not with everyone, no, but I've seen this over and over again, is that anything that you feel is positive inside of you, anything that you value, anything you feel good about will be turned around and used against you so that in hopes to make you feel bad or ashamed in this instance. For example, if you value being a kind person, they will find ways to call you unkind or mean or hurtful and spiteful. And they'll usually do so when they're in the midst of bad behavior themselves. For example, they're being very suspicious and you're going to check their text messages and they're doing something wrong and you catch them doing something wrong. They're saying inappropriate things to somebody else. And even though they're doing something wrong and they should put their tail between their legs and say, "I'm so sorry, you're right, you caught me and I've been wanting to tell you," they don't. They instead make you feel ashamed. How dare you pick up their phone? That is the worst thing you can do as a partner. They're going to overshadow their own bad behavior with yours. Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe you might think, well, I shouldn't look at that person's phone anyway. If that's the case, we don't even have to look at their phone. We can just ask them a question. Who are you talking to? Who are you texting? And typically, if the emotional abuser is guilty, they'll find a way to make you feel ashamed about prying into their life as if they're doing something wrong. And I've seen this a lot. The emotional abuser, the manipulator, the person that's trying to deceive you, the more defensive they get, it is sometimes a red flag. Not always, but it's sometimes a red flag that they're trying to hide something. Now, I can't say that's true with everyone because some people can get offended. What? You're looking into my private? Why are you asking these questions? But this is all part of all the compounding signals that you'll see and red flags that help you put together a bigger picture. So if you feel embarrassed, if you feel ashamed, these are components of emotional abuse. And again, this is only the first question of a 200-point checklist to help you identify what's going on in the relationship. The third one, the third feeling you might feel is guilty. Guilt is probably one of the most valuable tools for the emotional abuser. Whatever they know you'll feel guilty about, they'll use it. Whatever they know you'll feel bad about, they'll use it. One example happened here just not too long ago in my own house. Not that there was emotional abuse, but it was my girlfriend recalling that her ex continued to call her a bad mother. And she took that belief of, 10, 15 years ago. She took that on as a belief and into today, where she has a 17-year-old son right now, and she felt like she was a bad mother. And she could even recall times that she, quote, mistreated her son. And all these years, she felt that she was a bad mom because she wasn't doing all the things that the, quote, good moms were doing, according to her ex. She believed it. She took that belief into today, the present day. And it took her talking to another mom and asking that other mom, well, what did you do when they were crying? What did you do? Did you squeeze their cheeks and smile and laugh with them all the time? Or did you put them down and do your thing? And she had to ask these questions to learn that she wasn't a bad mom at all. She was completely normal. She was doing what she could, the best she could, and she did a great job. But she didn't realize it until yesterday. She didn't realize it until she asked her friend because things didn't make sense. Things weren't adding up. She couldn't really put the pieces together that she could have been that bad of a mom. Thankfully, she put that together. If you're in any type of relationship with someone who makes you feel guilty about something, maybe it's nothing that you did and everything that they're doing to you. again, in the bigger context of the red flags of emotional abuse, you have to put all these signs together, all these red flags together to find out the bigger picture. But don't carry any guilt forward if it's not yours. If it's theirs and they're putting it on you, it's time to reevaluate. And it does take a while, take some healing to go through when you have these guilty feelings. But that is definitely a sign when you feel guilty after a conversation with an emotional abuser. That's often a tactic they'll use. The next one is angry. You'll get angry because you'll be so frustrated that somehow they've turned your words against you, or they blamed you for something that they're doing, or they make you believe something is your fault and you can't figure out why you can't convince them otherwise. You get angry, you get frustrated. There's just no proving your point or convincing them. There's just no getting through to them. And they always seem to walk away in some sort of righteousness. And they always feel okay in how they're responding. And they always feel okay that you feel bad. They always or often feel like it's not them, it's you. You're the problem. And so you get angry. You don't know how to get your point across. It can be very frustrating. The next one is uneasy. Now, this feeling comes when you start to realize that no matter what you do, the system or the relationship system that is supposed to be equal, fair, and fun and loving is becoming one-sided and difficult to understand. You'll start feeling distrustful of all your interactions with them, and you'll even become distrustful of yourself. You'll become less secure in yourself. This is the uneasy feeling that comes from dealing with emotional abuse. Because I tell you what, the more you take on the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment, the more you start losing trust with yourself. And that is scary because you don't want to go down that road. So try to be aware if these things happen. If you lose more and more trust in yourself, were you this way before the relationship started? Did you have trust and confidence in your abilities? Then the relationship started and you started losing it? If that's the case, it's time to start retrusting yourself because whatever's happening is breaking that down. All right, the last one is you feel like you're blamed or made to be responsible for all the problems in the relationship. So aside from guilt, this is huge on the list of things that the emotional abuser will do to you. Making you feel like you're to blame, this keeps you on the defense so that you spend the least amount of time accusing them or showing them what they did wrong or how they did wrong. Just like I said a moment ago, they're going to point the finger at you. You're the problem. You're responsible for all of this. They're even going to say things like, you're the one who needs therapy. I don't. And you're going to take on the brunt of all the relationship problems instead of it being an equal 50-50 split that, hey, we need to work on this together. It just won't go that way. And all of these feelings that you can have after a conversation with someone like this, they put you in a vulnerable place. When you're in a vulnerable place, your defenses get knocked down. You're more easily exploitable. You're more easily blamable. It's easier to lay everything on you and give you the weight of all the problems. Even the emotional abuser's own bad behavior put all of this on you to make you think you're at fault. And when you're at your bottom and you just have no one else to turn to, the person you turn to is the abuser. This is what typically happens, is that when we're in this vulnerable space and we just want someone to understand us and love us, suddenly the abuser turns on the charm. And then you feel loved, and then you feel important, and then you feel significant, and then you're coming back and jumping into their arms, hoping to make up, get through this, and work on things together and heal and grow so that you can be happy again. And this is all part of the emotional abuse cycle, is that they wear you down until you get so worn down, you have nowhere to go. And then all you're looking for is someone to hold you. All you're looking for is someone to put their hand out or say, I'm sorry, or show some compassion and say it's okay. And when that person is the abuser, you develop what's known as a trauma bond or a traumatic bond. And this traumatic bonding that takes place is exactly why I call this show Love and Abuse. It is a mix of love and abuse. And it's a cycle that continues to repeat itself like a roller coaster. It's up and down. It's up and down. And it always repeats. If you think this is the last time, it's not. It always repeats. So you just need to be aware of this. This show is here to educate you, not necessarily tell you what to do. I'm not saying that you have to leave a relationship. I'm not saying that you have to blame anyone. I'm not saying that you have to point fingers. All I'm doing here is educating you so that when you have someone in your life that after talking with them, after being with them for a while, makes you feel any of these things, there's probably more going on that maybe you don't recognize, or maybe you do. Maybe you're already aware of these feelings that you might get after a conversation with them, and you know it's emotionally abusive. But if you don't, this is the time to understand what's happening so that you have more choices, so that you have a bigger perception of what's going on, so that you understand the reality of the situation or the relationship that you're in, so that you're not blindly dragged down into something that turns you into a shell of your former self. I don't want that for you. So again, Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, which is an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. If you want to pinpoint the exact behaviors causing the difficulties in your relationship, head over to loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.